Now, I went to the back way so that we wouldn't come into the front where those great big signs that said white and colored were up there. Because I didn't want Pookie to see it. He's from New Orleans. And he didn't understand this because New Orleans had already integrated. So then, I put my arms around Pookie, and we were walking towards the depot, and I was just grabbing him and pushing him and playing with him so he wouldn't look up. So then we walked in and safely got him inside so he didn't see that we were going to the white side. So then we get into the white side, and all the white patrons there turned and looked at us, wondering what we were doing there. Some of them stood up because they were excited and upset. And so then I told Pookie, give me the money. He did, while he was paying attention to all these people, wondering what was going on. And I went up to the teller cage and I said, I want to take New Orleans. And she says, we don't serve your kind on this side. And I said, the law has changed. And I want to buy a ticket. She says, if you don't leave, I will call the police. And I said, call them. So then Pookie was still looking around, didn't hear the conversation. And so then she called. And since it was right down the street from the police department, only one block over, they were there lickety split. So a police officer walks in, and then the crowd by that time had become unruly. They were gathering as though they were going to jump on somebody. And so Pookie was wondering why him. He hadn't done anything. And he was wondering why me, because I hadn't done anything. We just ordered to buy a ticket. So then the police came in, and so the one policeman stayed at the front of the depot, and the other one came in. And so then the teller told that police officer that we had no business being there. And the police officer said, the law has changed. He has a right to be here. She said, I am not serving his kind. She was a little more colorful how she described it. She used what sometimes I refer to as the big E. And so then, she, after she didn't serve at first, the police officer said, no, you gotta give him a ticket. So then, she took a ticket, and she threw it. And, well, it was paper, so it kind of floated in the air. And I showed my athletic dexterity, and I snatched it out of the air. I thought it was really great, you know. She threw it, I just, you know. Then she took my change, and she threw it too. Now, the coins flew everywhere. So then the police officer said, okay, you got your ticket, you need to leave. Because by this time, the crowd had become even more excited, and the police officer had to put his gun. I said, my money's on the floor, I'm not leaving. So then the police officer says, get your money, let's go. By that time, Pookie now is getting the light about what's going on. So then he hollers, leave the money, it's mine. And I said, no, that's my money. He says, that's my money, and I'm leaving it, now let's go. So we were back out of the door by the police officer. It was great, you know, just like some of these movies where the bad guys, you know, were backing out with a hostage. You know, he backed us out, he was putting the gun on the crowd, and seemingly the more he pointed the gun at them, the more excited they got about jumping on him too. And so then the other guy had to come and pull his gun, and so then they escorted to the car, told us to get out of there, and I shouldn't have done that, and all kinds of little things. They said I should have called the police before I went down there, so I could get some protection and all. But anyway, so now we're headed back to the campus at J-State. Pookie is beside himself, right? I mean, just beside himself. He tells me I shouldn't have done it, I could have gotten killed. He says that he almost wet on himself. He goes through all this stuff. And so then I apologize. I tell him, you're absolutely right, I shouldn't have done that to you. I should not have done it because I didn't tell you. And yeah, something could have happened. So I'm sorry, I apologize, but it's over. But he kept on arguing and arguing. So fast I pulled over, out of disgust, invited him outside the car, and told him, we can deal with this right now if you want to. Now, I told him I'm sorry, but if you want to go ahead and raise your fist, then you go ahead and do it, and I'm going to take you out, and then we'll be all right. Well, he decided he didn't want to do it. So we got back in the car, and now we drive back to J-State. We get back to J-State, and a bunch of students run out to the car. They dashed out to the car, and they said, we heard it over the news. The depot just integrated. Said 2 black guys came in there and bought a ticket, and the cops had to escort them out. That's what they just said. You all were down there. Did you see it? And Pookie said, that was us, baby. That was us. That was us, baby. You know, we did it. I turned to look over at him. I'd have told Shock, are you serious? Now, he has told that story over and over from his perspective. I went to Yale Law, and so I came when he was leaving Yale undergrad. And because he went to Yale for 4 years, and I came in there, I was with the same class years. So he was leaving Yale when I was coming into law school. And so I was over there in the undergrad one day, and somebody identified me as being from Mississippi. And they said, do you know a guy named Matthew from New Orleans? And I said, yeah, I do. Why? We understand he was so brave, he helped integrate. Anyway, I came here with a bit more social baggage than other Grinnell students. As I said, I didn't talk about it. Also, on this matter of leadership. You know, back when I was in the 10th grade, before even these things happened, 10th grade, I thought I was a leader. I thought I was a leader. And so folk were out there in Mississippi demonstrating, protesting, marching, parading. And Medgar Evers, who was assassinated in Mississippi, had made a call for students to come and demonstrate. He wanted 500 students to demonstrate downtown Jackson. I decided that I ought to go. My mother thought it was dangerous and said, you shouldn't go. I said, I have to go. Because I can't let others take the chance, the risk of being killed so I could enjoy the benefits and then later call myself a leader. So my mother thought about it. She agreed. And then she just pulled me close to her and gave a prayer and begged God to send me back. And then I went down to Masonic Temple, where the demonstrators were congregating. I led the first group out to Masonic Temple, 8 of us. We were supposed to be followed by the other 492. But Medgar Evers called it off because the police had gotten word and he didn't see the point of just sending students downtown to be arrested immediately. So my 8 went, and some were already in jail. And so then that left just 25 of us in jail. And because there weren't but 25 of us, the authorities decided to keep us. So I was in jail about 10 days, transferred from one jail to another. I was in jail during that time period, watching all the abuse that was going on in jail. And in fact, when I left jail, I left with some scars on my hands that I didn't have when I came to jail. Because I got burned, 3rd-degree burns, while I was there. And then had to showcase that to my friends. It became a badge of honor that I had these experiences. But that experience taught me a lot. First of all, it taught me how terribly cruel that some persons can be. It also taught me that just because somebody looked like me didn't mean they had the same interests at heart. Because there were trustees there at the jail who treated me just as horribly as did the jailers. In fact, I had to break up a rape. The black trustees, when Medgar Evers got killed, had tried to rape a black female who had been involved in a demonstration over Medgar's death, brought to a cell, put in a cell by herself, and these trustees had tried to rape her, black trustees. I had hollered for them to stop, couldn't see them because there was a divider. I can only hear her hollering, and then I took a chair, metal chair, threw it against the door. Jailer comes in and tells me that he ought to administer a beating on me because I threw this chair against the door. Then he turned and walked back out without acknowledging what I was saying, that a rape was possibly underway next door. And then I threw the chair back up against the wall a couple more times. He came in. Then other folk in there with me started hollering and screaming. So then he took his gun, told us to move to the side, went to a place where he could holler across to the other cell and said, all right, guys, knock it off. They're not going to be quiet. Just knock it off. We said that he not only knew it, he condoned it, and he was going to let it happen. So that night, that lady, whom I've never seen, was afraid that she was going to be attacked again. So there was a divider between ourselves. So that night I said, I'll hold on to you so that if anyone snatches you, I'll know it, and then I can try and give a cry. So I sat next to that divider. I put my hand out, she put her hand out. I grabbed her hand, she grabbed mine, and then she went to sleep that night with me holding on to her. So that's how she spent the night, ensured to be safe while I grabbed onto her. The next morning, when she woke up, and I let her go, and then we waited, and later she was released. I've never seen her, although I've heard a couple of people tell me this lady's story, and that she wanted to meet the guy who held her hand. But they didn't know that that was I, and by the time I tried to connect, I didn't know who they were. But I'd like to meet her one day, but I've never met her. But while I was there in jail, all kinds of other things happened. As I said, I managed to get burned very badly. Had to sleep a couple of nights with a 38 put to my head because I was deemed the leader. And they told me that if I signaled to the others to sing freedom songs, they'll kill me. So I told them to sing freedom songs. And so then when they came back in and told me they're going to take me out and beat me up and all of that, I didn't want to be beat up. Certainly didn't. But on the other hand, I was a leader. I had to make a call.